The San Francisco Giants are missing the playoffs for the 8th time in 9 seasons, despite adding Willy Adames in the offseason, despite acquiring Rafael Devers in June in a blockbuster trade. What is wrong with this team? How do they fix it? Is there hope for the future? All of that coming up next. Hello and welcome to Giants Baseball with Ben Kaspick. My name is pretty obviously Ben Kaspick, and I am the former host of Locked On Giants, a Monday through Friday podcast about the San Francisco Giants. Did that for 6.5 years, left in early August, and have really been taking a little bit of a mental break after spending so much time grinding with this team. Love this team still, but man, are they frustrating. And it was a very difficult last couple of months, especially like right when I left Locked On Giants. The team was in a tailspin and it kind of continued, and they ended up having this streak, which I think ultimately you can look at a lot of different things. I wrote an article on Substack about how these like 10 games against like the Pirates and some other weak teams, how they did really poorly, like 1-9 or something, or 2-8. And if they had just done better, there's all kinds of things you can point to, including that, and including losing 15 out of 16 at home. So before we jump into that, though, I just do want to point out this podcast is going to be free for everyone. Moving forward, they're not all going to be free for everyone. There is going to be a paywall. So if you're interested in this content, if this is your first time hearing me, you may be like, who the heck is this guy? But if you're familiar with me from my daily podcast at Locked On Giants, you're familiar with what I provide. And so now it's become independent, and it's on Substack where I put out content. And right now, and it probably just moving forward, it's going to be written content as well as podcasts. And on the written content, there's been a paywall. About halfway through the articles, we put it in a paywall. And then if you want to finish reading the article, you've got to be a subscriber. I set the subscription amount to literally the lowest that Substack would allow me to. It's $5 a month or $50 for 12 months. And then there's also a bonus tier that doesn't get you any real extra perks, except I honestly, a chat that you can have that includes me and others in that bonus tier. But anyway, so please consider subscribing to the Substack. Future podcasts will be paywalled, not necessarily all of them. If something huge happens, I don't know. It's like, I got to think about it. Do I paywall that? Because a lot of people want to listen, or, whatever. So anyway, you might be able to tell I have a little bit more energy because I've taken a little bit of a step back, and witnessing another Giants collapse and going through the grind of it day in and day out, no matter what, it takes a toll on you, even as a journalist, because as I always pointed out on Locked On Giants, I'm a lifelong Giants fan. And if you're listening to this, you're a Giants fan too, most likely. And so it's just brutal to miss. Like, the playoffs have never been easier to get into. There's 12 teams out of 30 that get in. And the Giants, the only time in the last, since 2016, the only time was 2021 with that 107 win season. So they haven't really come particularly close even. They're almost always right around 500. And once again, that's where they're going to end up, because currently they have 81 losses. So if they sweep this upcoming series against the worst team in baseball, the Rockies, then they would finish at exactly 500 again, which they did in, I think it was 2022. They've been like 81, 82, 80, 79, like in that range, like every year. And it's going to be that way again. They sit at 78 and 81. So at worst, 78 and 84 if you somehow get swept at home by the Rockies, and at best 81 and 81. And they've been eliminated. So yeah, it's just not good. But at the same time, I do think, and it's worth pointing out, that I believe this season, as opposed to let's say 2022 with Gabe Kapler. There was also 2023 with Gabe Kapler, and just that style of baseball they played when they were not winning was really unpleasant to watch. And even in 2024, it was still Farhan Zaidi at the helm. And so there was a lot of the same personnel type moves, like a lot of roster churning and all that. And that was unpleasant to cover and just witness as a fan. Whereas this year, there's been so much more continuity. And I think you see it in the dugout, like besides the times when they were losing, but that was more like they cared. And so they were clearly frustrated. It wasn't like a team that didn't care. So this team cared. You had energy, you had consistency with the roster for the most part. Like I think about a guy like Christian Koss just comes to mind, like randomly not randomly. He had a really nice spring. I was really impressed. He stood out to me a lot, like from a kind of scouting standpoint in spring. I was reading about how his glove wasn't good, and I was like, this guy looks like a plus defender at shortstop. So I don't know what that's about with the bad glove, but sure enough, I think he's been a great defender and has been stuck on the roster pretty much all year outside of an injury or two that he's sustained. And I don't know, at some point they had to make some moves, like Hayden Birdsong got sent down because he was just doing really poorly, and they've had some injuries and whatnot. But for the most part, it's been really consistent, and they've got everyday players. They've got guys who are out there every day, like Rafael Devers out there every day, Willy Adames, Matt Chapman out there every day, Elliot Ramos out there every day, Jung-Hoo Lee for the most part, although he's kind of played himself into sometimes partial playing time duties. And then, of course, Patrick Bailey is out there pretty much every day, but he's a catcher, so he needs some days off. So I appreciate that. Logan Webb, he's going to make his final start of the year, even though there's no benefit to him or the team even. But he's going to start the last game of the year, and I love that about him too. He wants the ball. He wants 200 innings every year, which he surpassed for the third or fourth. I remember when they shut him down, and he was not happy, but he said what he needed to say to the media. But he was clearly disappointed they shut him down when he was just shy of 200 innings in 2022. He was 7 2/3 away from 200, but this is now the third straight year of 200 innings for Logan Webb. Eventually you worry about wear and tear, but the dude's got a 3.30 ERA, just one of the best pitchers in baseball, and he's going to make one more start. It'll be his 34th of the year, and that will be a career high in starts. He's made 33 each of the last 3 years, but again, one more this year. His contract runs through 2028. So you've got 6, 7, and 8 left with Logan Webb. So that was, if we're looking back like at positives during the Farhan Zaidi era, having extending Logan Webb through 2028 at only $90 million total is a pretty nice deal. Like he would be set to reach free agency after this upcoming season. Actually, is this the pre? This is the pre. He would be reaching free agency now, actually, if they hadn't done that extension. I apologize. This would be the year he would be hitting the open market after 2025. So imagine that. And he's 28 years old. He'll turn 29 in November, but he would command, close to $200 million, I would imagine, something along those lines. So the fact that it's a $90 million total contract, not that you want to cheapskate the guy. I mean, I'd be more than happy if they reworked his contract, tacked on a couple extra years, gave him a little extra money, but you don't really want to be signing pitchers until they're mid-30s. And right now he's 20, he'll be 29 all of next year, and then 30 and 31. So this contract runs through his age 31 season, which aligns pretty well with when you maybe want to get away from a pitcher. But I would be okay adding like a guaranteed year and a club option. But I'm sure for Webb financially, he'd like to hit free agency at that point if he can, or at least the thing is people love Buster. And so this is a big part of it, is like Buster is going to be honest, and Buster is going to want to reward Logan Webb. And so it's less it's less of a business under Posey, I think, even though it still is obviously a business. But Logan Webb is happy here, and I think the Giants and Buster Posey are thrilled to have him. I'm certainly thrilled as a fan that he is on my team. And this is just one of the reasons why this season is so frustrating, and really but why the last many seasons have been so frustrating. Logan Webb, they've basically wasted 5 peak years of Logan Webb. They did get to the playoffs in 2021. He did throw an absolute gem in game 1 of that series against the Dodgers. And then he started the 5th game, I believe, and it was a very low scoring affair, but the Dodgers ended up winning. But in 2022, 3, 4, and 5, Logan Webb has a combined ERA of 3.24, and he's averaged, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4? He's averaged over 200 innings a year at a 3.24 ERA. So frustrating for him, I'm sure, frustrating as a fan to waste the prime years of Logan Webb. But the good news is I do think Buster Posey is not satisfied with this level of performance from the team. Not that he's going to rip them to shreds, but I think they're going to make efforts to be better next year. And so they're not going to tear it down and start over or anything like that. The problem is they've been trying to do this year after year after year, and it's just simply not worked out for them. But as Webb said, recently, I should say, he said this was the most disappointing year from his perspective of all these recent years where they've kind of fallen apart and faded away in the second half. And he said it's because he said something along the lines of, no offense to any of the other teams, but this is the most talented team that I've been on. And he said that I've been on, and that includes 2021, I suppose, although Buster Posey was on that team, Kevin Gausman was on that team, but still 107 wins, that nobody saw that coming. But you look at Ramos, Devers, Adames, Chapman as your top 4. You look at having Webb and Robbie Ray and the season he's had in the rotation. You look at what their bullpen started out as, and it is how can you not make the playoffs with this roster? It just kind of is a little bit befuddling. And if you look at the numbers, though, first of all, I'll get to my main point, which is that they had a stretch in which they lost 15 out of 16 home games. And one of the things I've done in these last couple of months is that I've not read every single article that comes out about the Giants, which is something I did for 6.5 straight years. And so a little bit of a mental reset. So I can't recall, but I want to say that was the only time in franchise history, and maybe a team hadn't even had a stretch like that. I forget exactly, but since it had been since 1901 is what they said, when it was 14 out of 15, and then it became 15 out of 16. And I can't remember if they just said, yeah, that's the first time they've ever had that happen. And so I pointed this out on Twitter. It depressed some people, but it's just simply true. If they had gone, what did I determine? 5-11, and this was written yesterday morning. If they had gone 5-11 instead of 1-15, just 5-11, which is bad for a home record for a quote unquote contender, they would have been holding a playoff spot as of yesterday when they were off. So I don't know if whatever took place yesterday would have put them in a tie or something, but let's just say 6-10, they would currently hold a playoff spot. And if they had gone 9-7 instead of 1-15, they would have already clinched a playoff spot. 9-7 is nothing crazy at all for a home record. And so you can point to a lot of things, a lot of they were the worst team in baseball for this stretch, and they didn't hit. They went this long period where they didn't score more than 4 runs for 3+ weeks. You can look at a lot of different stuff like that, but to me, losing 15 out of 16 games at home, when if you had just gone 9-7, you would have clinched that. By yesterday morning, you would have clinched, meaning by the previous night with I guess 4 games to go, you would have clinched that. That hurts. And so They just haven't, this year, they weren't able to stop the bleeding when it was happening, as it was happening. They also had some miraculous wins. It's like worth pointing out that some of these games they won, like they had no business winning early in the season. So baseball is weird. It's a game of stretches and runs, and you just got to limit the bad ones and maximize the good ones. And they just have not been able to do that year in and year out. And so we're going to get to a couple things next, just like the players who are reaching free agency, what the roster is going to look like when you wipe the slate clean, going into free agency. So their major free agents there's only like two of them. Justin Verlander making $15 million this year, and Wilmer Flores making $3.5 million. The irrelevant Tom Murphy making $4 million with a $4 million club option that has a buyout of $250,000. So that will definitely be picked up, and they will not be paying Tom Murphy $4 million. He's played 11 games as a Giant in 2 years, something like that. I don't know. Not many, not enough. And then otherwise you've got Devers signed through 2033. You've got Adames signed through 2031, Chapman through 2030, Robbie Ray 1 more year through 2026. Jung-Hoo Lee can opt out after 2027, so at least 2 more years, but he could also not opt out, and then it runs through 2029. Logan Webb, like I said, through 2028. And then, Verlander, Flores, and Murphy will be hitting free agency, and then the rest of these players are either arbitration eligible or pre-arbitration, like Patrick Bailey enters year 1 of arbitration eligibility next year. Elliot Ramos still pre-arbitration next year. And guys like Casey Schmidt, pre-arbitration. Randy Rodriguez, unfortunately injured, pre-arbitration. Landon Roop, pre-arbitration. Bryce Eldridge, definitely pre-arbitration. Not even going to get close to a year of service time. As he was just called up. We haven't talked since Bryce Eldridge was called up, so we're definitely going to get into him probably next. But where does that put them? Well, their 2025 estimated payroll, not luxury tax payroll, which includes things like benefits paid to players, and so it's a higher number. But their 2025 payroll is an estimated roughly $179 million. And once these players kind of hit free agency, and I think this is not accounting for arbitration salaries, they're at about $140 million next year. And so it gives them some room to spend. And I didn't even read the article, but there was a MLB trade rumors alert that Buster Posey said the Giants were quote, definitely interested in re-signing Justin Verlander. I don't know, man. He's going to be 43 years old in February. He's going to be 43. And look, he's had a better season. When I stopped doing Locked On Giants, it was pretty bad. But by this point, it's a 3.88 ERA. You're getting roughly a little bit better even than league average performance out of him, but you've got to account for aging. He's going to be 43. And so I would shoot higher than Justin Verlander. There are some good free agent pitchers out there. There's Framber Valdez, big sinker baller, would be a great lefty complement to Logan Webb. Dylan Cease, Michael King, Shane Bieber, Brandon Woodruff, Zach Gallen. Those guys are all free agents. Ranger Suarez of the Phillies, really underrated and talented pitcher. Merrill Kelly, giant killer, free agent. There's a lot of arms. Tyler Mahle having a nice season with the Texas Rangers. So I would aim higher personally than Justin Verlander. And I can't imagine he's all too thrilled with the way this season played out with the wins perspective. I think he gets one more start. He's 3-11 when it comes to wins and losses. I'm pretty sure he would have liked to pick up more than 3 wins, and in his quest for 300, he got from 262 to 265. You probably expected to get to at least 272, maybe close to 275. But no, he's at 265. And so this season may have killed his chances of 300 wins. Like, so I would be pretty frustrated if I was him. But part of it was his performance. Part of it was the bullpen just consistently blew games of his. A lot of ninth inning Ryan Walker blown saves when Verlander was in line for a win. And also the offense a lot of times didn't show up when Verlander was on the mound. So kind of a cursed season when it comes to wins for Verlander. Not kind of, like totally. So anyway, that's the situation. They will have money to spend. They have many places they need to spend it on, including the bullpen, which they kind of tore up a little bit with Randy Rodriguez getting injured and then trading Camilo Doval and Tyler Rogers. And so the bullpen has cost them games down the stretch here when they actually had a shot at making the playoffs. And I get why they sold at the deadline, because they were really not looking like legitimate contenders at all. So I wasn't surprised that they traded bullpen guys at the deadline. And also a guy like Tyler Rogers, I would love to see them bring him back. He is a free agent after the season. And so hopefully bringing him back is a priority. Hopefully fans can see that you maybe took him for granted about just, yes, like he gives up a weak dribbler hit every now and then, but like he's not giving up homers. He's not walking 4 batters in an inning or 3 batters. He's not falling behind everybody, coming in with the bases loaded and issuing a 4-pitch walk. Like he's pounding the strike zone. He's getting weak contact, and he's generally just not allowing runs. And so I would love to see Tyler Rogers back. I think that would be a great little outcome, because they got a pretty good return for Rogers and for a rental of Tyler Rogers. So anyway, they've got a lot of needs. And then on the position player side, there's just no doubt they didn't hit enough this year. But you look at this roster and you look at Devers and Adames and Chapman, and specifically those 3, but like clearly they need to do better. And one guy, so you've got free agency. There's Kyle Tucker out there. I just thinking about it, like without thinking too hard about it, like clearly right field could be upgraded. Like right now you don't even per se have a clear right fielder. And the left side of the infield is accounted for with Chapman and Adames. Second base is a position where they could certainly use an upgrade, but you've got some young players, so you don't necessarily want to give up on them, but also you need to upgrade your roster. So, and then you look at first base DH, and you've got Devers and you've got Bryce Eldridge, and then catcher, maybe you want to figure out something where you get a little more offense out of that position and maybe make it more of an even split with Bailey and somebody else. Bailey's so good defensively, it's a little bit complicated. But if the rest of your roster can hit, then it wouldn't matter as much, and you wouldn't rely as much on Bailey. But by the way, Bailey's been clutch with the bat like in his whole career. And so when the situation is big, I mean, walk-off grand slam against the Dodgers was huge. That really put them in a position where that next day, if they had won, they would have been making some noise. They would have moved into a playoff spot if they had won that next game, which I was actually at, and they had a 4-1 lead in the first, and they lost with Logan Webb on the mound. So that was kind of the dagger, and Webb himself mentioned that game. He said he was still upset about it, and that was quite a while ago now, a few weeks ago, at least 2 weeks ago. So anyway, I do just want to get into the promotion of Bryce Eldridge to the major leagues, what I've seen so far, and then a couple of comments from Giants general manager, one position under Buster Posey, Zach Manassian, who made some comments about Bob Melvin and Bryce Eldridge. So we'll get to his Bryce Eldridge comments after we talk about Bryce Eldridge, and then about Bob Melvin and his future, and then we'll wrap up as the Giants get ready to wrap up their season with 3 games against the Rockies at home. So Bryce Eldridge is in the major leagues. He's played 8 games. He's had 30 trips to the plate. He struck out exactly a third of the time, so 10 strikeouts in 30 plate appearances. He's also walked 17% of the time, which is impressive. 5 walks in 30 plate appearances. So half the time, literally, he's either struck out or walked. He has not chased. A 20% chase rate is really low. His in-zone contact rate is also really low, but he is a 20-year-old freak athlete, 6'7", and he just turned, no, he's going to turn 21, in October. So kind of reminds me of potentially like a Buster Posey debuting in 2009 in September, and then they gave him a few months in AAA to start the year, the next year, and then he came up in like June or May 2010 and then just set the league on fire. And so I wouldn't read too much into 30 plate appearances by a 20-year-old rookie, but the plate discipline has been impressive. He's also hit the ball really hard and just had a lot of bad luck. His expected weighted on base average is almost 200 points higher than his actual weighted on base average. And I haven't seen anything that really stands out in a negative way at first base, except maybe he made a throw to third on what ended up being a double play that Matt Chapman had to scoop out of the dirt. So it's like, ideally you're not throwing it in the dirt from first to third, but whatever, it's one throw. So he's looked comfortable out there, and so does Devers, by the way, and that's a big development, is that Devers has looked good defensively to me at first base. And so suddenly, if these two guys can both play a competent first base, like that's a pretty good dynamic pairing of potent lefty bats potentially. So the expected weighted on base average for Eldridge, 414, expected slugging, 614. His average exit velocity numbers are crazy, 98 miles an hour, which is very high. His barrel rate is like 28.6%, which is top of the charts. Hard hit rate is top of the charts. Chase rate is top of the charts. Walk rate, top of the charts. So it's a small sample, but it is intriguing. The results haven't been there so much. And then, of course, you can't be swinging and missing so much at pitches in the strike zone. But again, he's 20 years old. And so let's just hear what Zach Manassian has to say. He says of Eldridge's future, I guess, like what they're just talking about, where does he figure into their 2026 plans? And his answer on KNBR to Brian Murphy and Marcus Boucher was, I don't think there's any guarantee as we go into next year. It'll be about what is available. I think his role, as things have evolved over the past week, has gotten some first base. He's gotten some first base. He has DH'd. He gets Devers off his feet. I think long-term, that's probably what we envision as far as those two being able to split time. And I agree, like just having those two, and if Bryce Eldridge can become what a lot of people think he can become, and I see it, I see how it could happen. You could potentially just have two awesome lefty first base DH types in your lineup for years to come, hitting, Devers has hit a lot of homers as a Giant. Like his kind of pace of home runs has even been higher as a Giant than it was as a Red Sox. And so I think that he will reach that 30 home run mark as a Giant at some point. He's hit 19 homers in 87 games. So, maybe hits one more or so over the weekend, and that'll be 20 homers with the Giants and 35 on the season. And so, yeah, you love the power there, obviously, from Devers. The strikeout rate jumped. That's like the one thing that kind of changed from Boston to here, is that his strikeout rate went up to what would be definitely a career high if it were to last a whole season, by a lot. And so we're not used to seeing him strike out 30% of the time. His career rate is only 22%. And so hopefully coming into next year, it's more normal, and therefore all the other numbers would kind of jump up. But yeah, his home run to fly ball ratio it would be a career high, 23.2% with the Giants. So when he's hit the ball in the air, it's gone out almost a quarter of the time, more than a fifth and less than a quarter of the time. His fly balls have been converted into home runs. And so you love to see that. And it gives you hope that he could be like a just serious force in this lineup for years to come. But we're talking about Bryce Eldridge. So Manassian continued that the traditional box scores haven't jumped off the screen, but he highlighted Eldridge's glove, exit velocity, and patience as reasons for optimism about what he could become. He says it's been encouraging to see Bryce's defense. He made a nice play Wednesday, had the big diving catch on the line drive in LA. He's seeing the ball well. He's not chasing. He's hitting it hard. those are things that usually, it's not just hard hit, it's up there at the very top. When you put those things together, it really is a nice foundation for a really good offensive player. And that's kind of how I see it too. And then it says, it's talking about Eldridge's personality and mindset has won over the front office. He said, the other thing is too, we're excited about the person. He's cognizant of his surroundings. He wants to be the best player he can be. Just a super respectful young man and works really hard. The intangibles are there as well as the skills and tools. And yeah, I mean, he doesn't look overwhelmed either. He looks like he belongs. He looks like he believes he belongs. And so those are all the ingredients. It's just a matter of seeing the results. And who knows, maybe he goes crazy this weekend against the Rockies and you go into the offseason, feel like every game, he's only played 8 at the major league level. And so every game is an opportunity for evaluation for him. And I personally think, certainly we're not jumping to conclusions after 8 games, but I'll enjoy these next 3 and see what he can do out there. Hopefully he's out there every day. So finally, we'll get to Bob Melvin. And I just thought that the comments that Manassian made were interesting because they weren't like, yes, 100% Bob Melvin is our manager for 2026. He was again talking to Murph and Marcus on KNBR, and he said the following, quote, "There's always going to be conversations, whether you're winning or losing. You're always going to have conversations about your staffing and how it looks. In regards to Bob, he's a consummate professional and he really cares about the Giants. Beyond that, we'll just continue to do our work. And as the season ends, we'll evaluate the team and evaluate our system and our options going forward." So in this article, I'll tell you in a second who it was written by. On NBC Sports Bay Area, they say Manassian and San Francisco appear to be committed to Melvin after exercising his contract option for the 2026 season in July. However, changes must be made for the Giants to return to the glory days Posey experienced firsthand as a player. So so this was written by Joaquin Ruiz on NBC Sports Bay Area and published last night, the 25th of September. So I don't know, like Bob Melvin, is he the perfect manager? No. Is he the worst manager? No. I think the staff has some issues. On the hitting side, I've been skeptical the whole time. Are they like modernized enough on the hitting side? I'm not sure. It's tough to know when you're like not there. The players seem to like the staff. I don't know. I like JP Martinez as the pitching coach. They did kind of have injuries and then made trades. So their pitching was quite good for much of the year. And then it's kind of fallen apart in the last couple months. But I don't really blame the pitching coach for that. And I think JP Martinez is actually really well versed in like modern pitching philosophies and whatnot. And so I have no problem with him, but on the hitting side, I do have some questions. And then Bob Melvin himself, I mean, look, I certainly haven't agreed with everything he's done, but do I think he's the reason the Giants are where they are? No. But ultimately something has to change. Like that last paragraph says, like it says, however, changes must be made for the Giants to return to the glory days Posey experienced firsthand as a player. I would expect some sort of coaching overhaul, whether it's firing Melvin and really revamping the staff. I don't know. We will find out. A lot of that stuff does happen around this time of year or like right after the season ends. So we will find that out and find it out soon. I think the main thing is just going to be that I expect Posey to continue to be aggressive in pursuing name brand talent in the offseason, which is, we know they tried to acquire Kyle Tucker in a trade. They tried to acquire somebody else of significance whose name is, or like, I just forget who it was, but then they did go out and acquire Rafael Devers and they signed Willy Adames and Posey helped extend Matt Chapman. So I would expect more of the same in that regard. And that's exciting. That it should be a fun offseason. I expect they'll make moves for, not a Tommy La Stella 3-year, $16.5 million contract type move, but, give Kyle Tucker $360 million, just go for it. Like, it's not my money. So I don't know. We'll see what they decide to do. I am personally heading out of town. So this will probably be the last podcast for a while because I'm not bringing the microphone. It's possible I decide I should, now that I think about it, because there's possibly going to be breaking news, like with the season ending for the Giants on Sunday. I will be gone, but I do write also on Substack. So you can find the Substack. It's Giants Baseball with Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. And I've also linked just my personal website. It'll take you right there. benkaspick.com will take you to my personal Substack page. And again, this episode is free. All the podcasts so far have been free, but eventually they're not going to be. So if you'd like to support the work that I do, I've just needed a little bit of a break, but I still am committed to covering this team, and I appreciate each and every one of you who's followed me from Locked On over here. I know I haven't put out that much content, and a lot of it has surprisingly, even to me, been written content. I think maybe I just needed a break from podcasting, but I do enjoy the written content as well. So if you want to support my work, it's $5 a month, $50 for 12 months. So you get $10 off for the year. And I pledge to continue putting out content. I can't commit to an exact number, but I'm not just going to disappear. And so everyone who's subscribed, I really appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, that's okay too. And you're getting this one for free, and maybe a future episode you'll check out and figure out that it's paywalled and want the whole thing. And then you'll subscribe. I don't know. So no pressure either way, but it's much appreciated to everyone who supports the work that I do. So once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. You can check me out on Twitter/X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. That's really the only place I do social media regarding the Giants. And YouTube. These podcasts go to YouTube as well. You can find the podcast there. It is called Giants Baseball with Ben Kaspick. And it's everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. So subscribe. You'll get, whenever these go live, you'll get them. You don't even have to add Substack. But what you'll find is that they may be paywalled, and then you'll have to go to the Substack to subscribe and get a separate RSS feed that'll give you the paid version of the podcast. But once that happens, I will be explaining it along the way, so nobody who pays can't figure out how to get the full podcast. You will get that. So anyway, thank you for listening. I think the game is starting now, so apologies for the weird hours, but it's kind of irrelevant time-wise because the season is essentially over for the Giants. They're just playing out these 3 games, meaningless games. I care. I want to see them not have a losing season. So go sweep the Rockies, finish at 500. It's the best they can do at this point. And hopefully some young players get a chance to impress, like Bryce Eldridge and others, in these final 3 days. So this has been the 2025 season, another one of disappointment for the Giants, but still, I believe, hope for the future. I assume Buster Posey had a good enough time that he'll stick around. I would assume, too, he doesn't want to just quit after one season where things didn't go right. So you never know. He could just eventually be like, I don't want to do this. So that's another thing to look out for as well, is just at what point. Posey did that with playing, right? He could have kept playing. He had a great year in 2021, and then he was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then he quit. So there was a option that was for sure going to be picked up for $20 million. And he was just like, no. Thanks. So anyway, we will see you next time. I don't know exactly when that will be. I'm gone for 2 weeks, but the written content can be done from just the computer. So look out for that. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I'm Ben Kaspick. And as always, even if it doesn't matter, go Giants.